Hello everyone, it's Mr. Bizarre here, once again stepping into the shadows to unravel tales of the uncanny, the enigmatic, and the deeply hidden. In this video, I'm going to tell you about 3 of the most disturbing medical incidents that I have ever read. Before we start, I just want to warn you, these tragic, real-life cases are extremely graphic. The third and final story being the most recent and horrifying of them all, so make sure to stick around for that. Viewer discretion is advised. So let's begin with today's first story. In the quiet of an early morning, under a sky still painted with the hues of dawn, a scene of unimaginable tragedy unfolded in a field by the Bryn Kegin Business Park in Bangor. It was here that the life of Reginald Alan Roach, a 63-year-old man, burdened with a deeply tragic past and profound inner turmoil, came to a harrowing and solitary end. Margaret Webster, a retired nurse taking her collie for a morning walk, stumbled upon what she initially perceived as a mere hump on the grass. This innocuous discovery quickly turned into a chilling emergency as she realized it was a man, Reginald, lying in the recovery position, groaning in distress. With no pulse to be felt and blood covering his groin area, Webster's training kicked in as she dialed 999 and began CPR, a futile attempt to claw back a life already slipping through the veil. The police and paramedics arrived, unveiling the gravity of the situation. Reginald had inflicted upon himself a grievous wound, having amputated his own genitalia, leading to catastrophic blood loss. Despite the frantic efforts of the emergency responders, Reginald was rushed to hospital, where he eventually succumbed to shock and hemorrhaging, pronounced dead at 1:08 p.m. Dr. Brian Rogers, a Home Office pathologist, conducted a post-mortem examination and said he found no evidence of any blunt force trauma to suggest Reginald had been assaulted, nor any evidence he had taken alcohol or drugs. Dr. Rogers said Reginald's genitalia had been completely removed. "It's likely he would have bled profusely," said Dr. Rogers in an interview, expressing his view that Reginald died from shock and hemorrhaging. The inquest into Reginald's death peeled back layers of a life marred by psychological struggles. Having to register as a sex offender for exposing himself in public, Reginald's conversations with Michael Murphy, a trainee probation officer, revealed a man wrestling with extreme psychological torment. "I'm old now," Reginald said. "I have no use for these. You can take them if you want," while gesturing to his crotch. These remarks were dismissed as jest, yet they were a grim prelude to his final act, a declaration of a soul in anguish. Reginald's brother, Keith, provided a glimpse into the origins of his torment. A serious head injury at 22, followed by a diagnosis of schizophrenia and antisocial personality disorder, framed a life derailed. We can only imagine what sort of psychological state Reginald must have been in when he decided to amputate his own penis. The sort of agonizing pain even attempting such a thing would cause is unimaginable. Yet Reginald was in such a state that he followed through with the act completely. The case of Reginald Alan Roach starkly illuminates the profound and often tragic intersections between mental health disorders and the extreme acts to which individuals may resort in their darkest moments. Reginald's decision to inflict severe harm upon himself is a distressing testament to the depths of despair and disconnection that can accompany severe mental health challenges. His history of schizophrenia and antisocial personality disorder, compounded by a serious head injury, sketches a portrait of a life besieged by internal struggles. In the chilling corridors of medical history, few cases are as haunting as that of one man, who we will call John, a 36-year-old man whose ordeal with chronic heart failure led to a disturbing and ultimately fatal incident at the University of California, San Francisco Medical Center. John's story begins in desperation and medical complexity. Admitted to the ICU with chronic heart failure, his condition was dire from the outset. His heart, weakened and failing, could only muster an ejection fraction of 20%, a far cry from the normal range of 50 to 75%. This was a heart struggling against the tide, barely able to pump blood through a body inching closer to its limit. Complicating John's condition was a rare congenital defect known as bicuspid aortic stenosis in a heart that should have been his lifeline. One of its most crucial valves was malformed from birth, possessing only 2 cusps instead of the typical 3. This defect not only made his valve more prone to narrowing, but also destined it for early replacement, a fate John could not escape. He had had his valve replaced with one made from the tissue of animal donors, yet, even with this biomedical intervention, his heart's capacity to sustain life was slipping away. The week following his admission was marked by a harrowing symptom, the coughing up of blood and mucus, a physical manifestation of his body's internal struggle. It was a violent, relentless coughing that demanded increasingly more supplemental oxygen to sustain him, a testament to the severity of his condition. But nothing could have prepared John or the medical staff attending to him for what would happen next. In an episode that seems more akin to the realm of medical anomalies than to everyday reality, John, during an intense coughing spell, expelled from his body an intact cast of the entire inside of his right lung. This bronchial tree, a critical part of our respiratory system, had been replicated in a blood clot that bore its exact shape, an eerie, almost otherworldly phenomenon. The cast, displaying the anatomy of the lungs with a spaghetti-like consistency, was a stark representation of John's plight, revealing the extent of the damage within. Doctors, astounded by this rare occurrence, immediately performed a bronchoscopy. They found that while John had managed to expel this bronchial cast, his lungs were still in severe distress, with blood present in the basilar branches of the right lower lobe. Despite their efforts and a brief respite from the symptoms, John's condition rapidly deteriorated. Just 1 week after coughing up the bronchial tree cast, John succumbed to the complications of heart failure. Volume overload and low cardiac output, the heart's diminished ability to pump blood, claimed his life, ending a struggle that was as much as a battle with the limitations of the human body as it was with the condition that afflicted him. John's case, though deeply unsettling, underscores the unpredictable nature of medical science and the mysteries that still elude our grasp. The final story in this compilation, perhaps the most disturbing of the 3, unfolds in the confined space of an Airbus A380 charting a flight from Bangkok to Munich. This narrative centers around a 63-year-old German national and the harrowing medical emergency he experienced abroad, witnessed by passengers and recounted with a palpable sense of horror. As soon as the man and his wife boarded the plane, his ill appearance did not go unnoticed. Witnesses described him as sweating heavily and struggling to breathe, signs that, despite reassurances to the crew that he was simply tired from running to catch the flight, suggested a severe underlying condition. His symptoms of cold sweats, breathing much too quickly, as described by passengers, sparked alarm among the cabin crew, prompting the pilot to call for a doctor over the loudspeaker. A 30-year-old Polish medic swiftly arrived to tend to him. He took the man's pulse and asked him how he felt, before indicating that he seemed okay. The man took his seat, and the crew brought him chamomile tea in an attempt to alleviate his symptoms. This, however, did little to help, and quickly after he took his seat, what should have been the final red flag, prompting the crew to have the man immediately taken off the flight for a thorough medical examination, presented itself. The man began to cough up blood into a bag. Yet, despite this deeply alarming symptom, the man insisted he was fine. However, things took an even more macabre turn when the situation suddenly escalated out of control shortly following takeoff. According to passenger Karen Misfelder, the man's condition deteriorated rapidly. What started as intermittently spitting blood into a bag evolved into a more gruesome and violent scene as blood began uncontrollably gushing from his mouth and nose. This sudden and shocking turn of events plunged the cabin into complete chaos, with Karen recalling the absolute horror that ensued as everyone started screaming. As the man struggled to hang on to his life, blood and other fluids erupting from his face, the walls of the plane became splattered with blood, painting a grim and unforgettable picture of the medical crisis unfolding. We can only begin to imagine the trauma experienced by his poor wife sitting next to him, desperately attempting to help him as liters of blood poured from his mouth, covering everything around them. Flight attendants, along with a doctor who happened to be on board, sprang into action, attempting to resuscitate the man for approximately 30 minutes. Despite their efforts, their attempts were in vain, and the man was declared dead on the flight. This tragic outcome led to the plane turning around and returning to Bangkok, an hour and a half into what was supposed to be a 12-hour journey to Munich. The aftermath of this incident was fraught with chaos and sorrow. The man's wife, likely overwhelmed with shock and trauma, was tragically seen numbly navigating the mundane formalities of airport security, alone. We can only begin to imagine what she must have been feeling in those very moments. Lufthansa, the airline operating the flight, expressed its condolences, stating that despite the immediate and comprehensive first aid measures taken by the crew and the doctor on board, the passenger succumbed during the flight. The airline also expressed regret for the inconvenience caused to the passengers of the flight, all of whom were rebooked onto alternative flights for their journey home. This incident not only highlights the unpredictable nature of medical emergencies, but also raises questions about the preparedness for and response to such crises in confined and controlled environments like that of an aircraft. The story, while deeply upsetting, serves as a stark reminder of the fragility of life and the importance of support in moments of extreme distress. So that's it for today's bizarre video. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Should I cover more disturbing medical incidents like this? I'd appreciate your input. That's all for today, and I'll see you next time.